Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast here, and I'm back with my co-host Connor Newton, and we're back
Hello.
this week talking about a movie that Connor chose, and it's a throwback. It's an old movie. I believe Connor was made in the was it the late 50s? I think it was.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's titled Vertigo. Now, I don't know how many people have heard of this movie, but I don't know if Connor, you want to like maybe briefly mention like how you came about this movie or if you've watched it before.
yeah. I mean, I had heard of this movie a while ago. I'm sure it's more well known with older generations because it's an older movie. But I think when it came out, it got like mixed reviews. But like in the
Mm.
more recent years, it's gotten a lot more like acclaim and stuff. So, but basically, it's a movie directed by Alfred Hitchcock, who is like known as one of the great directors of like the last century, right?
Mm.
And I'm taking a class on Alfred Hitchcock right now, which is what led me to choose this movie to watch. I heard it was good, so I wanted to, or I heard it was, I don't know about good, but like important. I heard it was important,
Mm.
so I
Well,
thought,
I'll definitely say it was interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely
yeah,
say that.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I hadn't seen this. Neither had Ryan going into this, so
yeah.
we both have fresh takes.
Yes, which is new for movies that we chose. I feel like in recent podcasts we've chosen movies that at least one of us has seen like previously, right? So
Yep.
I don't know. It's good to get a new movie that neither of us have seen.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I don't.
Especially,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, especially one like this, because I don't even really know where to begin with this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, it's hard to know where to begin. I mean, I think maybe if we want, we can either begin by just going right into the beginning of the movie, or we can talk about just kind of our overall thoughts of, kind of just our impressions of the movie. I don't know what you would prefer.
I think we can go into let's walk through the beginning of the movie because I think that
Mm.
for a movie that neither of us have seen before, it would be like valuable to
Yeah,
like talk about what our mindsets were like at certain points in the movie and like what we were thinking as we were watching it.
sure. Yeah, I
So
agree. So, I mean, if we want to start off with the start, I mean, I'll tell you, like, it got off to, I would say, a pretty dramatic start. I mean, I want to like in these movies that are older or that are from the 20th century, like the middle of the 20th century. I feel like a lot of them, have like the very overly dramatic like music. You know what I mean? That comes in like
yeah,
I wrote down that it reminds me of kind of like Tom and Jerry. Like it'd be very like it's kind of
mm.
lame, but it's like very, you know what I mean? Like very like over the top.
Yeah, like you are you talking about like in the intro? It was like
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
when it was the chase scene, I believe, on the rooftop.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You know what? It made me think like this seems like music that like classic composers like John Williams listened to
mm,
and perhaps influenced their work later in life. Because I
yes.
felt like you seen kind of some of those like whimsical, almost like, over the top things, but like
Mm,
the more recent composers like figured out how to utilize those better. I just felt like
yes.
you could see that that it influenced later scores and stuff like that,
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point because right when you look at music made by John Williams specifically and like a lot of other like more modern day composers in like very famous soundtracks and stuff, it combines that like very, I guess, dramatic like sense, right, in
Yeah,
the
kind of like
music.
it's very
Hmm.
grand,
But it also doesn't go too over the top where it becomes cheesy is not the right word, but I'm going to use that kind
Well,
of a word.
it's not like it doesn't make it so that the music is the main focus, right?
Mm.
Whereas in this one, I feel like sometimes in older movies, the music kind
Yeah,
of like is so grand that it overshadows what you're seeing.
sure.
Whereas like more in like John Williams, he does it where he just like connects it to
Mm.
the picture so beautifully and you don't really notice it's there, but you still love it, if that makes
Of course.
sense,
No, yeah, it doesn't take over the scene, but it like helps out the scene a lot. Yeah.
Mhm.
But the beginning of this movie, it was there was a chase scene on the rooftop, and basically it ended up with someone falling off of the rooftop, right?
Yeah,
And
policeman.
they died. And the main character, who we come to find out is the main character, Scotty, he was unable to prevent them from uh, dying, right?
Yeah, so yeah, because he was hanging off the edge himself, right? And
He
the other
was.
policeman was trying to help him up.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and then right, and then from there he ends up. I guess we kind of I think it was just kind of a dream of sorts, or like a night, I don't know, just kind of in his head, a memory he was reliving. Because
Hmm.
then the next thing we know, like he's in his house or his friend's house.
His friends, yeah, Midge, I think was
Yeah,
her
I think her name
name.
was Midge. Yeah, he was in her house, and yeah, the next thing we know, we were there. So I wasn't sure if maybe it was like a dream or if it wasn't real, but obviously it ends
Yeah, I
up.
was on the same page. I was on thinking that same thing.
Yeah, but then we end up realizing that it was real, because
He
in
talks
this
about it with
in
her.
this first scene he talks about it, and he talks about his I forget, it was some sort of phobia, a fear of heights, right? It's
Yeah.
essentially what it was.
Hmm.
And understandably so, right? I mean, he was terrified of heights because of what happened to the other policemen.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was must have been a pretty traumatic experience.
Hmm.
Like I can't imagine. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
And
So
he said, I believe he said he gets dizzy, right? Is
yeah,
what he said.
that's what the vertigo is, right?
Yeah,
It's the dizziness
that's
that comes with
yep. And
when he
that's,
gets high. Yeah.
you can make the immediate connection with the title of the
Mhm.
movie, Vertigo. So yeah, and I thought this first scene in Midge's house is kind of, I don't know, I thought it was interesting. I mean, you get to watch how he handled his phobia early on, I suppose. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it was good. His it's funny, his idea that like you slowly in increments like face your fear of something
Yeah.
is like actually like a method to cure like phobias. Like
No, yeah,
you
and I thought it
right?
was, yeah, it was cool to see him trying that too,
Yeah.
like grabbing like the the
Hmm.
step stool and then like the high chair, and like when I was watching that, I was thinking to myself like, what's gonna happen? Like he's gonna get to a point where it's gonna be like it's too high for him, right? Like what is
Yeah.
that point gonna be? And I felt like the movie did a good job of like even in a small scene like that, kind of building a little bit of suspense on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because you knew what was going to happen. You're like, he's going too high, too fast. Like, he won't be able, he won't be able to get over this height, and that's what that's what ended up happening, right? And then he ended up, I guess, falling off, or kind of, was
He
it
just kind of
passing
got,
out, kind of,
yeah,
or
he
just,
kind of hallucinated, got
oh,
dizzy, that kind of thing.
yeah,
So
yeah. So we get that introduction, I suppose, and
yeah.
then,
And we
uh,
find out also, I just want to point out in this scene that he and Midge were engaged in college, which I thought was kind of weird. Like
yeah,
now they're like friends, like close friends.
they threw
I
that
thought that
in
was
there,
interesting.
and I guess it kind of played a part later in the movie, but it
Hmm.
was interesting, and he made sure to point out, like, you're the one that broke it off, and we never, never really get into that, but I don't know, it was just kind of an interesting little tidbit. Um, and then the next later on, we get introduced to one of his friends from his past, right? I think he knew this guy previously,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, I looked it
Um,
up. His name is Elster. Gavin Elster.
Gavin Elster. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Gavin, he gets introduced to him, and they start talking. And from at this point on, we found out that Scotty was actually the former, was it chief of police? Was it, or was he a detective?
He
Or
was a
he
detective,
was
but
a
he's planning on
detective.
retiring.
Yes, he did plan on retiring. I think he might have actually retired around that, like
Yeah, he
just
might have just
retired.
retired. Yeah.
And his
Um,
friend wanted him to come out of retirement to help track his wife, follow his wife.
mhm.
Um,
Right, because he
and
was fearful. He was fearful of his wife's like sanity. He was fearful for her mental health, but he didn't want to commit her to any sort of institutionalized care before having like Scotty just check it out, make sure that just see if things were on the right track or not,
oh
basically
yeah,
with his wife.
yeah. And then from then on, we get to hear about the whole story and this whole idea that she's right possessed, I guess,
Mhm.
right? And I don't
Yeah.
know, I didn't really believe it, neither did Scotty, right? I mean,
No. Yeah.
he didn't really believe it, and rightfully so. But I
But
guess,
when you're watching it though, like you see all these things, like you see how she like stares at the picture of Carlotta in the museum, Carlotta Valdez,
mm,
and you see how she visits the grave
mm,
um, where Carlotta's buried, and just the way she's acting, you kind of feel like well, if she's not possessed, like what's going on? Like why is all this stuff happening if she isn't possessed? And that you
mm.
kind of have that like thought like pretty early on in the movie, or at least I did.
Yeah,
You
no,
know.
I did as well, because at this point, from this point on, right, it kind of goes to, he basically just kind of follows her, right, for a while, a good portion of the movie, at least, a few scenes. So he follows her, to right that art museum, right? He sees her, I believe, initially, right, in that restaurant, but he follows her to the art museum where, right, he saw the painting of Carletta. He follows her to the hotel, right, and he investigates and finds out that she's been there for a few weeks, right? She comes at random times, I guess, and eventually, I think he follows her enough where does it get to the point where she goes to the bay, or did something happen before then? I don't want to jump too far. I don't want to jump too far ahead. But
Well, first of all, he kind of does I think he kind of does a little bit of investigation uh, into like who Carlotta Valdez is and like the story behind it. And he like has Midge like take him to the
oh yes,
expert on San Franciscan history, basically.
The guy at the bookstore, yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we learned that this might in fact have some truth to it. That Carletta did in fact, I believe, did she kill herself? Right, I believe.
Yeah, she did
that's
kill
what
herself
happened.
at 26, which is the same age that Madeline
was.
is. Yeah.
Yep.
And apparently she spent a lot of time down in this mission that was like south of San Francisco. That is still that's preserved as like a museum in the modern day world, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to, by the way, you made a really good point that I didn't really address just a minute ago, and I wanted to address it, that like when we watch Madeline and we watch him following her, a lot of the times, I guess the actress did a pretty good job, but you kind of notice a sort of vacancy, I suppose, in like her expression, right? And I know you mentioned that, but I wanted to highlight that again because that definitely was true, at times, and you can kind of tell when she was, I guess, possessed, right? Because she would just kind of stare kind of blankly at things, right? So that was definitely, I mean, they did a good job of that, or the actress did a good job of that, and definitely sold it. Because I did start to believe it, right? I started to believe, oh, she's definitely possessed by, or she could be possessed by her great grandmother, is who it was.
Yeah, and I don't know, like knowing Hitchcock, I'm like, oh, this isn't he's not like an actually like a supernatural story guy. Like I know like he doesn't really do like horror. It's more like, suspense, right? So what is the thing here? Like, and I was thinking about that. I was like, it seems like so believable. Like why is she acting like this?
Yeah,
it was definitely and I couldn't figure it out as a viewer, which I thought was cool. It's like it kept me intrigued. So
well, what kept me intrigued at this point was like I thought when he was following her, I kept thinking like she's gonna catch him, like she's gonna turn around, she's gonna see him in her rearview mirror, she's gonna see him at the art museum, she's gonna see him at the flower shop. Like I thought she'd catch him at some point, but she never did.
Which it was a little bit suspicious at the time, but I didn't really give it a second thought until later when we find out more information.
Yeah, and I guess looking back, like it definitely like makes sense why she never caught him. But yeah, so he
follows her to the bay, right? That's where we're at.
Yes, that's where we're at. And this scene, it was a good scene. I felt like you could know exactly where it was going. At this point, you still believe that she's being possessed by Carletta, because why wouldn't you? Or is it Carletta or Carlotta? I don't want to. Carlotta. I'm sorry. Yeah, but she was being possessed by Carlotta, and like you're like, okay, she's why would she looks like she's throwing flowers into the bay, and you knew that she had a history of killing herself, so you're like, okay. I mean, I at least thought like this was something like that was going to happen, where she ends up fainting or falling or jumping into the bay.
Yeah, it looked like she jumped. In my opinion,
it did. Yeah, I think she said faint, like the whole faint. It was just kind of like to pass it off, right? I think is kind of
yeah. And then she's like in the bay, and she's like unconscious or whatever, but she's like floating, and he jumps in to save her.
Yeah, he does. He jumps in and saves her, and from this point on, after this scene, I kind of started to see where this was going. At least the relationship between Madeline
and Scotty.
Yeah, you could kind of see where it was going, because from this point on, he brings her back to his house or his apartment, and tries warms her up, cleans her up, obviously, from what he thought was a suicide attempt, or or some weird possession sort of thing.
And he's not like he's not like intentionally like trying to like, I don't know, become romantically involved with her. He's just trying to like be a nice guy and do what he thinks is right at this point. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah, and he's very polite and
Hmm.
and she's very receptive towards it too. I think when she wakes up.
Yeah, I think so as
Um,
well. But she did mention, I think she's like, wow, you're very like very forward with all your questions. Like you're right to the point. You're
oh
like,
yeah, because he wants to know more about what's happening, right? Because he's really confused, like
hmm,
because she seems so normal when he's talking to her now, right? As
yeah.
opposed to when he's been following her around.
Hmm.
So
And again, she sells this very well. Like, right, she answers it like all correctly. She doesn't really properly remember all this, right? She's like, oh, like I see it in like a dream. A lot of the stuff that she's seeing,
hmm hmm
which would kind of tell you that like maybe she's being possessed, by someone, by Carlotta.
yeah, and it seems like it doesn't seem like she's trying to trick him or anything. It seems
Yeah,
pretty earnest from at least watching it as a first time viewer.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I was at this point, I was pretty convinced. I was like, okay, so how are they gonna, prevent her from, or Carlotta from killing this
Yeah,
lady, right? I
yeah, and
was,
I could also see like you can kind of see the connection, and you can kind of tell that they're a little bit interested in each other at that point. I thought,
yeah,
which you makes you wonder like, oh, this other guy's his friend. Like, how's that going to work if this is his wife?
yeah, yeah. That was the immediate thought. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could notice it definitely when he got her coffee and the whole
Mhm.
scene from that point on.
Yeah,
Um,
and then she leaves.
and then she just
Um,
left. I think he went to go grab something and he came back and she was just gone.
I think he went and he took a call from her husband, and
Oh,
he was
yeah,
like
in
concerned
the
what
in his
happened.
bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he came back out and she was gone. So that was
hmm
that was abrupt, I suppose.
Yeah,
And
but then
then the next scene, we get we get the furthering of the relationship between the two, right? I think
he's following
he's
her.
following her again, and he ends up following her back to his own place.
Yeah, yeah.
And we end up seeing her leaving like a thank you card or an apology card, I think is kind of
hmm
what it was.
hmm
And here at this point, the connection between the two of them was kind of it was if it wasn't obvious before, it was obvious now. Um,
hmm
so yeah, I thought that was I mean,
Yeah,
I guess it was
they're.
interesting. It was at this point it was kind of like complication of sorts, I would say, right? It
hmm
was like how are they going to navigate this?
Right, right. Yeah, and you can kind of see that they like each other, and um, I think it's at this point where she really starts to like talk to him about her like experience with being possessed, right? Like the dream she has, like the fear she has of dying, like how close she feels like she's getting to it, and that kind of thing, you
Like
know?
the darkness in her dream is what she referenced,
hmm hmm
right?
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, I felt like it seemed like the main conflict of the film was going to be how are they going to free her of this, right?
Mm.
Is that what it seemed like to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, up until this point, and even after this point, it felt like it was like, okay, like how are they going to prevent her from from Carlotta from killing herself or killing Madeline, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that seemed like the end goal to me.
hmm
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't have any like there weren't any doubts really in my head. I wasn't,
No,
I,
no.
not at this moment at least.
Yeah. But then I think what happened was okay. So she tells him about her dream, and he's like, "Oh, I know that place. Let's go there in real life. Maybe that'll help." Right?
Yes, and it was like the forest with the redwood trees. Is that what
No,
it
I mean
was?
like when she tells like the mission when they go to the mission, basically.
Oh, the hotel.
Yeah, because the redwood trees. I
Yes,
thought
yes,
that
yes,
was
yes.
actually interesting when they
It
were
was
like
ve-
looking at
it
they were
was very
looking at the
interesting.
rings and stuff. I
Yeah,
think it was
that's what I wanted. Yeah, that's what I was
she's
thinking.
like I was born here and I died here, like
Yep.
as if Carlotta was speaking. I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Like she did a great job of kind of selling it. I mean, looking back, like we can get into this later in the movie or later in the discussion, but like looking back, like she did a really good job of like.
yeah. I thought both actors did the both of the main characters did a really good job.
No, I thought so too.
Yeah, I mean I don't know if you've seen other movies with Jimmy Stewart in them, but he normally plays like he's normally the protagonist, but he normally plays like a really sweet guy and like
Mm,
um always putting others before himself and stuff,
okay.
or at least just a really like honorable dude. And he was in this too, but you could also see a little bit of like,
He was in this too for most of the movie,
mm-hmm,
right? But
mm-hmm.
not towards the end, I would argue.
No, and I thought he did a really good job of selling his character's like
Mm,
arc basically throughout the movie, you know.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they continue to go to these places. You know, it continues to be more believable that Carlotta is kind of on the cusp of doing something bad to Madeline or to her body, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And you know, this is kind of how it goes until you know they reach those redwoods, and we have that whole conversation where she alludes to like her being Carlotta, and it was really weird. But then shortly, I mean, I guess shortly thereafter, um, they they end up kissing, and it ends up going down this whole rabbit hole of like they're in love, I guess. It was very quick.
Yeah.
It was very quick to me. I don't know if the movie, that was the one thing about this movie that I wasn't, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I might not have been entirely sold on, at least at the start. At the end, I was with the whole
Mm-hmm. With their relationship, yeah.
yeah, I feel like it just all happened very quickly. I feel like at the beginning.
I agree that it happened quickly, but I do think that the direction and the acting of the scene when they first talk after he rescues her, and then when they see each other the next day when she arrives at his house, I thought that you could definitely feel that, like, it wasn't like out of the blue, like you knew where it was going, right? Like I thought that those scenes were well enough directed and acted that it didn't really bother me how quickly it was. At least not when I was watching it. Maybe looking back, I'm like, yeah, that was a little quick, but
maybe I know I would agree. I think that those those two scenes were pretty like they were definitely like important.
But I could definitely see that though that it was like very abrupt to decide like, oh, like we're in love now. But I mean I think that was also pretty common back then for movies like. The main characters meet and then they're in love, you know. Like.
Sure. I also think, and this is kind of unrelated, but I wanted to mention this. I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of these scenes, first of all, the camera quality was top notch. I want to say, I don't know if this is like, you know, I don't know, but it felt to me like for a late 50s movie, like this camera quality was really nice, really good.
Yeah,
I felt like.
And some of the effects I thought were really well done too, like especially with his like vertigo. And like when he was having like his kind of fits, like it doesn't have to look super realistic because it's in his mind anyways, but it was like really visually engaging and stuff. So.
Yeah, sure. And I also thought that, you know, at least at the beginning of the movie, like the scenes, like the length of the scenes of like just like one scene, I feel like the length of the scenes were longer than you'd see in like a movie nowadays. I don't know if that's
I agree. Wrong, the pacing is a little bit slow for me, at least in the beginning of the film.
And I honestly didn't mind it though. Like it was a little slow for sure, but it's like different. It's very different from nowadays, right? Because nowadays there's a lot of quick cutting between camera angles and the like. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But it was very well thought out. Like it felt like they were really utilizing the technology that they had for the time to like tell the story. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, so you know, we get this whole the whole scenes of furthering the idea that Carlotta is, you know, I guess possessing her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do we get? We get the fateful scene that kind of turns the whole movie.
They go down to the mission because Scotty thinks if they go there, which is the place she says she's seeing in her dream, that it'll help her kind of like cleanse Carlotta from her soul or something.
Yeah.
Like it'll help her like move on and stop thinking about it and being traumatized.
Yeah, or she'll be able to make sense of like, you know, what she remembers. Like she'll be able to remember like what, you know, what actually is happening. Like, or where she's been.
She'll be able to gain more control over her own mind or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they go there, and what ends up happening, right, is like they end up. I believe she keeps telling him she wants to go to the church, right? Is what ends up happening, and she keeps insisting upon it.
And she insists that she goes in alone as well.
Yeah, she insists that she goes in alone, and from this point on, you know, I mean, you can see where it's going. I feel like because this whole movie up until this point, you know, it's the idea that she's been possessed by some older, you know, her great grandmother, I suppose. But I don't know. I thought it was pretty straightforward or kind of obvious to where it was going.
Yeah, I mean, I had actually seen that scene before. I don't remember where I had seen it, but I had seen that scene before, and so I wasn't entirely surprised. But I didn't realize it was from this movie, right? So I'm watching the movie, and then I was like, oh wait, I've seen this scene. I think I had to watch it for some class or something.
Oh, okay.
But when I saw the scene for the first time, without having watched this movie, I was like really stunned that she actually jumped off the tower, right? Like that was shocking to me. I was like, wow, they did this back in this movie. Like that's some balls, you know? Like I don't know, I don't know how you would put it technically, like professionally, but and then I also want to talk about like the setup to it where they're talking and she's like, if you really love me, then like you should let me go in there alone or something, or like
Sheesh.
or she was like, if you lose something about like losing her, like I don't remember exactly what she says. Do you, Ryan?
I just remember her kind of saying that like I remember her saying like I have to go I have to go let me go like trust me, like just let me go alone. That's all I remember. And she also said like I love you, and like, they kissed.
Yeah,
And
she
she
said
went away.
something like, you'll know you really love me once you lose me, or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, she might have said that. Yeah, it's very possible. All I know is that she said like I have to. I just remember her saying I have to go, something like that. I just remember, and looking
Yeah.
back, like it makes it kind of it makes perfect sense, like for her to say that, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
uh, as it turns out, it wasn't actually
Mm-hmm.
what we thought happened. It was something completely different. But this whole scene, from the perspective of her being possessed, I thought that this was a fantastic scene. I mean, it was seemingly obvious to me, like he should have known that she was possessed, and he knew
Yeah.
something was wrong,
He
and
must have been,
he let her go.
he just wanted to do what she wanted, but he wanted to protect her at the same time, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. That's why he followed immediately behind her. And, we watched him try to overcome his fear of heights, which I thought was good. And it showed that,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you have enough willpower and, you can overcome your fears, which is what he really did. I mean, evidently, or at the end of the day, he didn't quite make it to the top of the tower and save her,
Mm-hmm.
but he
But he put in a
still,
lot of effort, more effort than I think that
and he was
they
almost there.
expected him to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was really close. Like she was
Mm-hmm.
running up those stairs as fast as she could. And she made it up the stairs, and next thing you know, she's just hauled off the side of the church. And I'm like, wow, she really ran up there and just jumped off. Like, really?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked. I was kind of surprised. And
You're
even when she
like,
had jumped off and landed on the roof, part of me was like, did she survive? Like, there's no way she has died. Like,
well,
that's
okay, I
it.
saw her laying on the roof and I was like,
Yeah.
she's dead. Like, where's this movie gonna go from here? You know?
Yeah.
Like, man, I
Yeah.
don't know.
And from here, next thing we know, they're talking about kind of how she died and if anyone's at fault, and they find no one at fault, right? And it kind of wraps it up, and it's like, okay, well, she's dead, and no one's at
Mm-hmm.
fault, and so we can all kind of go home. And the husband talks to Scotty and kind of says, "I'm just going to leave town forever." I
Yeah, and you can tell that Scotty is really traumatized too. Like he's
Yes,
very quiet and
he reminded me of Madeline when she was
yeah, no,
when
I
she
agree.
was possessed. And
Mm-hmm.
I found that interesting because I was like, oh boy, is he possessed now? Like that was literally my first thought. I was like, is he
Oh
possessed now? Like
yeah.
that was my initial thought. But it ended up just him
Yeah.
being traumatized. Yeah.
And he goes into like excuse me, sorry, it's like he goes into like sort of like a care center or something for a bit, right? Like he gets
Like a mental ward
um,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah, not necessarily a hospital. Like he's not insane, but like they were just watching him to make sure that he doesn't do anything to like hurt himself or something or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and they were trying to get him back into like the right mental state.
yeah, they're trying to get him back to his normal self,
And that
basically.
and that scene was sad because Midge, right? That was,
Yeah, and she
she
really cares for
was.
him. Like you could tell she wanted to be with him.
Well, we did, yeah, because we didn't talk about a scene actually, um,
Yeah, where she
right?
did the painting that was
Where
like the
she
Carlotta
where she made a
painting.
painting almost exactly like the Carlotta painting, except of her.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he was like, no, no, like don't, why'd you do that? I don't know. I just thought that was like I felt really sad. I felt sad for her. I felt really sad for her
yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
you sensed like how like she covered up her emotion immediately until he left, and then after he left, she was just kind of like she was so sad. Like she was just like
Yeah,
she's like,
yeah.
no,
And you
why'd you
don't,
do that? Like
yeah, and we don't really get much more from her aside from the scene where she visits him at the mental ward, you know? So,
yeah, I mean, all you really get is that she really cares for him, right?
yeah, yeah, which, but I still think she's an important character. Like, well, I mean, we could talk about this at the end, but I think, like, in the scope of the whole movie, like, she's like a lot of people where, you know, I think, I mean, we can talk about this at the end, but
No, we can talk about it briefly now. It's okay.
yeah, but I think that like Scotty's character is supposed to be like Hitchcock is like a version of Hitchcock, like himself. Like he's kind of telling like a very personal story. Not that he actually experienced something like this exactly, but
Sure.
Hitchcock had like a history of having these like relationships, not like romantic relationships, but like relationships with his leading women, like blonde women who played like strong leading roles, and he really liked using blonde women, and he like became like attached to certain ones. He would use them for like film after film, and then maybe they would get married or they would stop like working with him or something like that, and he always felt really like betrayed once that happened. And he felt like, oh, they've left me to be married or something, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I just thought in the scope of the whole film, where Hitchcock is kind of like telling the story that's like very personal to him, I think that at the same time he had like adding that character like Midge is like, oh, it's like, but it's not always like that, there's
Sure.
other.
Well, I mean, I like that character just because, like, and I talk about this all the time, and I'll say it again because it's something that people in the audience watching this movie, at some point in your life, right? A lot of people, or at least a good amount of people, will relate to how she felt, right?
Yeah,
At some point. So I think it
like you
was,
just can't be with someone because they just don't want to be with you, but
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And like, she was just, you could feel her, you could feel how sad she was, right? And you could maybe not relate to it, but just have sympathy for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either way. So I thought that was, maybe it wasn't super important for the plot, but it was important for the audience to have something else to connect to.
Oh
So
yeah, I
I
agree.
thought that
I
was pretty
agree.
good.
And
Um,
yeah, I think it also showed just how obsessed Scotty was with this woman in particular,
yes, and
that he
we,
dismissed Midge so quickly.
yeah, and so next thing we know, right? He's out of the mental ward or hospital or wherever it was
Mm-hmm.
facility. And
And he seems
he's,
to see Madeline wherever he looks. Like he's at the
yeah,
restaurant,
and
he sees like a blonde woman. It's like,
at first you think he's kind of normal, but then first like he's seeing Madeline, right? You like you
mm-hmm,
said, wherever he goes. And this is, I mean, it's a problem. It really is, right? He sees it
mm-hmm,
in every girl who even has blonde hair, right? He just
mm-hmm,
thinks is Madeline. And so you can see how obsessed he is. And I think this is what, at least a few months later, at least, if not like a year later, it was
mm-hmm.
sometime after her death. And then we meet this lady,
Yeah,
this redhead,
Judy,
right, named
yes.
Judy, and he goes to see her, and I thought it was just like, oh boy, like
Yeah.
he's just kind of he's kind of losing it now.
Yeah. I mean, I thought she looked similar, but I didn't think she looked like the same person, you
Yeah,
know?
she did not look like, well, she changed her hair, her hairstyle, her outfit, everything, so it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard, like she was kind of similar, but a lot of the things were pretty different. So yeah, I
Yeah. And
agree
when
with
they're doing that first conversation, you're like, you can kind of understand her perspective. Like, dude, like, I don't want anything to do with this. Like,
you. Well,
and he's like, oh, you just remind me of her. And like, she's like, okay. She's like, yeah, I guess, like, I'll go to dinner with you. And you're like, okay, maybe this could end up like, okay, like he's found like a new girl. Maybe he'll like
exactly.
her and like, you know.
I was hoping that, okay, you can move on. We can have another love story in the second half of the movie, and it's great and it ends
Yeah,
well. But that's not really what happens. It turns
no,
out we get a perspective from her
yeah.
that
And it
she,
turns out that she was Madeline, but not anymore.
yep, she was
And
actually acting. She was pretending to be Madeline for
yes,
Scotty to
yes,
fool him.
right. And she was just helping Elster to
Mm.
kill his real wife.
Yep, which we never
Um,
find out why he wanted to do that. I guess it's not really relevant.
I
Um,
think that he wanted her money, um, and also he wanted to be free to do whatever he wanted. Right, like now he can leave
oh, and go
and
back
move
to
away
Europe
and
or wherever he
stuff. And
wanted.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I'll
but
tell you, he took it to the extreme.
yeah, like because what happened, I guess, is that when she ran up there, they knew that Scotty wouldn't be able to make it up there because of his sickness, his vertigo, and his fear of heights and stuff. So she ran up there, and then he already had his real wife up there, which she tossed off the edge, and
Yep.
just exactly the same as she was,
Yep.
and everything. So,
And
and they needed Scotty because they needed a witness to say that she killed herself, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, and we can move forward in this pretty shortly. I just wanted to say, like, what was in it for Judy in this? Do we ever get clarification on that?
Well, um, at some point, like when at the very end when he's like asking her about it, um,
Oh, okay.
she said to, I think she does say like, he's like, he said like, oh, what did he give you? And she's just like money or something. I don't know. But
Oh,
she
I
was
see.
obviously not very passionate about that at that point. Like she didn't really care about it at that point, you know.
Yeah, I mean, she
So
cared about Scotty, is who she cared about. Um,
hmm
so
yeah.
what? Sorry, were you gonna say something?
Well, I was gonna say yeah. She obviously cared about him enough to literally do exactly what he wanted all the time.
Yeah, so we
So
can get into what happens now. So he doesn't really know what actually happened, right? So he goes with Judy to dinner. It doesn't seem like he's happy really, or either of them, I suppose. They spend a
mm-hmm.
lot of time together. She agrees to do it because from her perspective, she actually loves Scotty because she was the one who had in fact spent all that time with him earlier.
Yeah, yeah, and I think she does really
Mhm.
feel like really for him because she did spend all that time with him,
Yes.
and she feels like they do have that relationship, even though he doesn't know that she is the same person, right?
And I
So
think that she should have told him what happened because
no, I 100% agree.
I think he would have reacted well. I think he would have
At
reacted
least early
well.
on, he would have.
Yeah,
He
he would
could
have.
have. She could have explained everything, and
Mm, but I guess she was afraid too because obviously they murdered someone,
right.
and I think she was just afraid of how he'd react to that, right? Which
She
is
was
under.
afraid. She was afraid that he wouldn't love her anymore. I think is what she was afraid
Yeah,
of.
she was
Right.
afraid of his reaction, which is understandable, right? I mean, I guess I understand
Mm-hmm.
that, the fear of, right, him not understanding or being
Mm-hmm.
okay with that.
Right. And and I like that you can see it from her perspective like that, right? It doesn't seem like, oh, like just tell him like what have you got to lose? Like you can understand her perspective, you know what I mean? So
Well, yeah, I think we get that a lot when we hear her narrating that letter she wrote, remember, in
mm-hmm.
her room, and I think like that kind of helps like shed some light on her perspective.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good. But,
Mm-hmm.
through the next like 20 minutes or so of the movie, we get like multiple scenes of basically Scotty trying to change her and trying
Mm-hmm.
to change her into Madeline. Exactly. Not like, kind of like her, but like exactly like the same
Yeah.
outfit, the same hairstyle, right?
Yeah, and he
It was sad to me. I'm going to be honest. I felt sad for her and for him
no,
sort of in a way.
I agree. Yeah, it felt like an awful situation being on both sides because
Yeah.
and you could see how much she wanted to resist that too. I don't know. I think there were a lot of reasons that she was so upset that he was like looking for like the exact outfit and like the exact
Yeah.
like and she was really
She had
resisting
the
it.
outfit.
Yeah, number one, I think she wanted him to love her, right? Not Madeline. She wanted him to love Judy,
Yep.
which that's very complicated, but
As
and
long
then
as he thought Madeline was dead, he was never gonna love Judy as Judy. That's the thing.
right, right. And the other thing is that I think that made her so upset about it was she thought that she if he made her wear that outfit, change her hair or whatever, make her look like Madeline, he would realize that she was Madeline, right? That
Yeah.
he would realize the truth, and I think she was really scared of that as well, which is why she resisted.
And I mean, hey, he did figure it out in the end. But before we quite get there, I want to point out one more time that when you watch, like she's just like he's trying to get her the exact outfit, and it was just like she was miserable. Like, and he wouldn't really admit it either that like that's what he was trying to do. Like he's like,
Mhm.
oh no, I'm just trying to get you nice clothes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and then we get the same thing with the hair. Like she gets the hairstyle, and she's like, fine, I'll
yeah.
do it. And
And he's he's like not putting up with anything too. Like if they walk out with the wrong outfit, he's like, no. Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, and it was really
you can
weird
tell that
because he was such a
he's
nice guy.
obsessed, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, but he doesn't really. I don't think he really fully realizes like the lengths of which he was going to. You know what I mean?
mhm,
I just
yeah,
don't really. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't think he fully grasped what
And
he was
then we
doing.
reach the point where she says, if I change for you, will you love me? You know what I mean? And she's like, becomes willing to do it just so that
Yeah,
he will love
feels the same
her.
way that she feels about him. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's too bad. It was really it was hard to watch, and I guess the answer was yes for a very short period of time.
Hmm.
But shortly thereafter, he decides like
Well, he sees the necklace, right?
Yeah, yes, that
Um,
was a very important catalyst. He saw the necklace that was initially on Madeline. I guess it was always on Judy,
well, it was
but it was from Carlotta's. It was
yeah,
Carlotta's necklace.
it was Carlotta's necklace. Yep.
Yeah, so he sees that and realizes, okay, something's like he's a detective. Like, okay,
Yeah,
something's
no,
wrong here.
yeah, and it's totally believable that he would figure it out too, right?
Hmm.
He's obviously a little bit, late 30s, early 40s, right? And so he has been doing detective work for a long time. So I didn't think it was like a reach that he would figure out what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, he decides, okay, we're gonna drive up to or down to uh, the back to the church, back to the same place where
Mm-hmm.
Madeline killed herself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and basically, he forces Judy to
To reenact
reenact the
essentially.
scene, and he doesn't realize till they get to the top that she had already done this exact thing. So like she was like, I don't know, it was just really weird. And you could see him realizing how it happened as he was kind of talking his way up the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and he was I think he was talking a lot to himself just as much he was talking to her,
mm,
like trying to explain to
he was
himself
kind
what
of
happened. And
piecing it together in his head, except out loud.
yeah, yeah,
And I thought the scene was really good. At this point in the movie, the pace definitely picked up at this point in the movie, like these last
yes,
20 minutes or so. Like it was just like the emotion, like the sadness you felt for her, for kind of like the disappointment that I felt for him, like that he was that like fixated, that obsessed with just one look of someone who had died. It
yeah,
was hard. It was just kind of hard to watch. It was just,
yeah,
but then this last scene, you knew he was starting to, maybe he wasn't starting to lose it, but he thought, I guess initially, right, he thought that if he saved her at the top of the stairs, he'd be able to move on because he had saved her.
yeah.
Strange
Hmm.
logic, but I don't know. I don't know if you had something to say about this whole.
No, yeah, I think that I think that he didn't really know exactly what he was going to do when he got there. I think he was starting to figure it out even before they started walking up the stairs. And I do think that he had this idea in his head that if he could save her, he'd be able to move on. But I also think that he really wanted to
Mm.
almost get back at her for how she made him feel. Not necessarily by killing her. I mean, I think he really wanted to scare her in a way, just to make her
Yes.
feel just how traumatized he was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Which,
but
man, again, I felt bad for a lot at a lot of points in this movie. I didn't, but you have to remember she did help kill someone, so you have some
no,
sort
she
of.
did. I mean, but I don't think she was a bad person, right?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think she deserved to be put through what he put her through.
No, no. I mean, you'd argue almost no one it does deserve that. Like that was just
No.
like it was. If she didn't love him, like there was like she would have been out of that a long time ago, right? But
Yeah.
she was kind of
Yeah,
stuck.
she was about to run away, but then she couldn't because she loved him. So
Yeah, she was stuck. Like I remember she was sitting there, and I remember typing like she looks miserable. She's sitting there in her apartment or I guess hotel room, like just kind of like she looked miserable. And
mhm.
then she's like, I want to. She's like, I want to leave, but I can't or something, or like I won't. Like she wants to, but she can't because she loved him. So it was just
Yeah.
a very very again a very
Yeah.
tough, very sad
And
situation
that
for her.
end scene I thought was very, very suspenseful because I had no idea what was gonna happen when they got to the
I
top, right?
didn't either.
Because I was like, it feels like he could actually push her off, but also he's like the protagonist. So it's like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, I
And
also thought there's a chance it could end happily. Like you get the top saver, and that's it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
then
I
you realize,
agree.
but then he realized what happened, and he was just I guess angry, obviously, understandably frustrated, like
Yeah.
realizing what actually had happened. Like he was like, "Why did you do this?" He was shaking her and everything. And I guess it ended very honestly, I'm gonna be honest, it ended very strangely. I really thought either one he had pushed her or two she jumped. Because I was like, "There's no way she slipped."
Well, okay.
Seriously?
First of all, she admits what she did wrong, which I thought was a very redemptive thing for her.
Yes, I
Being
agree.
able to verbally admit to him. I
Yeah.
thought that was it really wrapped up, like her character's arc, I thought. Um,
Yes.
and she begs him for like forgiveness and she wants to like be with him. Like she still loves him, even though he's treated her so badly, right? Like she understands, even though he's treated her badly, she understands why he did it, right? Like and she still cares for him, which I don't know how logical that is, but that's how she feels, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm okay with it because, like, feelings very rarely or a lot of times don't follow, like, logic. So
no, yeah, no. And and it seems like maybe he will forgive her. I mean,
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe he did, and maybe they could have lived,
Maybe.
happily
That's
ever
what I was
after.
hoping, but I guess she got too scared of a nun and she fell off the side of the building.
Yeah, I thought when I was watching it, I did not think he pushed her. I
didn't either.
He definitely didn't push her. But when I was watching it, I thought that she jumped off the edge when the nun came up there.
Mm-hmm. I thought she was scared of, like, the nun for something. Like, she was scared she was going to do something or reveal something. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought she was, or I mean, like, apparently when I looked it up, it said that she
slipped.
She stepped backward and fell.
Which I guess she was scared, startled at the nun and stepped back and fell, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't know, but I don't know. It felt like she jumped to me. I don't know if it felt like that to you.
To me, it felt like it felt like she got just very surprised. She was startled, and initially I thought she was scared of the nun and jumped off. Like killing herself was better than facing the nun, but clearly there's no reason for that because all the nun do is come up and ring the bell.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind as to why she would jump off was that she felt that she had done such wrong that she couldn't make up for it, basically.
She couldn't face what she had done.
Yeah, or she felt that now that he knew, she couldn't live knowing that he saw her like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But to be fair, she didn't really. She only gave him a very quick moment, which is hard. It's hard to react to something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was because of his reaction, but I think that
his reaction certainly didn't help her mindset. I agree with that. Like it was, he reacted in a very aggressive way, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I do think that he probably would have forgiven her. I think he would have.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was in love with the person, not necessarily Madeline, but I think he was in love with Judy.
That's the thing.
Know it.
That's
right?
the thing.
Or
That's
was
a great question. I think that he was actually in love with Madeline, and no matter what, even after he knew that what was going to happen, say they both survive, he still would have been in love with the idea of Madeline and not Judy, because when he fell in love, it was Madeline to him, right? And that's who she was playing as a character. And since she was no longer playing Madeline as a character in her real life for obvious reasons, I don't know if he would. I don't know. But I'd lean towards,
that's a great point.
He'd have a very tough time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we don't know because she died, right? So
yeah, we don't know. But I mean, you really question his mental state at that point. I mean, he's probably doing real poorly after that. But it just ends. So
but you could tell that he was, when she falls off and dies, you can tell that he's
devastated.
He is devastated, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
I just watched the clip again, and you don't actually see her jump or fall or whatever. You just see his face and then hear her scream. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It was a very abrupt ending, I will say. It leaves a fair amount of questions, but I'll tell you, this was just a sad movie at the end. I'm gonna be honest. It was just a sad movie, and I think it was well done. I think that I really liked the second half of the movie in terms of the emotion it conveyed. I think that it did a really good job of. Again, you were right. Both of these characters early actors and actresses respectively did a great job in their roles, I think. And I think they did a really good job of I thought she was possessed in the first half, right? And then you could really see the emotions in them, especially in the second half, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
You could see her conflict between being miserable and being in love. You could see him just
you could see him from, detective,
to a normal, nice person to
he loves her,
being obsessed.
He's depressed, and then he becomes obsessed, and
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that obsession is really what the movie is about, right? Like that it's not good for anyone to
That
be,
obsession is dangerous.
yeah, or like to be possessive of a person or
Mm.
obsessive about a person isn't good, right? Or isn't healthy. And
Or to make, try to force someone to be someone that they're not. Don't try to make
yeah,
someone change who they are for
yeah.
you.
And obviously murder is bad too. Like
Well, yeah, but that's not
that's obvious.
that's not
But
like the
that's not
main
the but that's not what
focus.
the movie's about, right? It's not really about the murder. It's
Yeah.
about the trickery and also like their like mental states
Mm.
um and he does get over his fear of heights at the end, you know?
Mm.
So
Yes, he does. He does conquer his fear of heights, which I guess good for him. He
yeah.
loses the girl arguably twice, but at least he conquered
Yeah.
his phobia of heights, his fear of heights.
Yeah. I thought, and you know, when you're watching the second half of this movie and you're seeing him like asking her to do all these things and she's doing them, you're like, this is like she did something awful, but he is like controlling her and really dehumanizing her. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yes,
And that feels awful to watch. And you're like, and you just feel so bad for both of them, which I think is amazing that you can make like when you see stories like that make you feel
mm,
like empathy for both characters at the same time, you know?
I agree. Yeah, and I don't want to jump the gun too hard, but what at the end of, if you had to give this movie a rating, what would
Mm.
you what would you give this one?
I think that this movie, I think it was really well done, and I think that it it did really well as far as suspense and also like keeping me engaged and like having unexpected things happen, which I
Mm,
really enjoy. Um, the only things that I like that kind of put me off, I guess, were I just felt like the beginning of the movie was just too slow for me.
I
Like
agree.
I wasn't really engaged until we kind of got into like the meat of it, you know.
Hmm.
And it might just be because like the idea of like her being possessed and like I didn't really understand like what is going on in her head, you know, which doesn't actually end up mattering. But when you're watching the movie for the first time in the first half, you're like, where is this going? Like I don't understand. Like how is this going to end up being an interesting movie? And um, I don't know. I mean, I was interested, but at the same time, I was like, I thought I signed up for a Hitchcock film, like a suspense movie, not like he's trying to get the thing out of her head or something,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, it wasn't like terrible. Like, I still enjoyed the first half of the movie. I just think that I enjoyed the second half a lot more, and that I thought it was a lot better paced. So I would probably give this. I do really like the movie overall, though. So,
Yeah, it's tough.
oh, I'm like, I don't want to say something I'll regret. Um, and I do think that it's really technically well done for the when it was made as well.
Yeah, I mean, just and this doesn't have to be necessarily the overall quality of the movie. It just depends like how much you enjoy it. Just how much
Yeah,
you
I
enjoy
mean,
it in general.
I think that the movie is like probably worth. What did we do last week? We did Annihilation. I give it a 90, right?
Yes, I give it
I
like
would
I give it a
also give
92.
this film a 90.
Okay,
So I know
and
that's not very exciting to give it the same rating, but
no, it's
um,
okay. And I think we can be clear; it's for very different reasons.
right.
These two movies are different. Annihilation, I'd argue, is pretty suspenseful throughout and keeps you on your
Hmm.
toes throughout. This movie is more a setup from the first half
Yeah.
towards very chaotic and emotionally
And I do
turmoil.
think that this movie is more focused in its general ideas than
Yes,
Annihilation is.
Annihilation is more up to the audience interpretation of multiple different kind of themes
Hmm.
you can take away.
Hmm.
This movie is more focused on the emotions you feel for these main characters. I feel like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't
that's
know if I'll
fair.
be able to watch it again very soon
No,
because
I agree.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me, I'll make this brief. I mean, the first half of the movie, I agree, is slow, and for me, I judge this by, and I know people's attention spans are shorter nowadays than they've almost arguably ever been. But for me, I judge like how engaged I am in a movie is generally like how one of the ways I view like how good it is. And for me, it was just hard to stay engaged for like I'd say the first half hour. It was just kind of hard, especially with the long scenes of just pure kind of filler dialogue's not the right word, but like setup dialogue. It was setting up the movie,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of hard to stay fully engaged with that right throughout that whole kind of setup. So for me, like that kind of puts a little bit of you know it kind of
Yeah,
dampens it
and
a
I
little
don't mean to
bit. I don't know.
jump in, but I don't know if you felt that same way about like a lot of the scenes where at the beginning where he starts following her. I felt like could have been quicker, right? We don't need to spend so long on him driving after her in the car and stuff. You
Yeah,
know, it's like,
yeah, especially if she's not going to notice them or fake not
yeah,
notice them. Um, I agree. I agree. I mean, you could get the point after one or two of those, right?
mm-hmm.
I would say. But yeah, and then the second half of the movie was, I mean, I thought it picked up a lot, obviously, and the emotions you feel. We've talked about this at length. I think give it a sort of like gravity. Like you just feel so bad for this girl. You just feel so bad for what she's going through, and you also just you feel bad for what he's gone through already. And his mental state, is not he's not in the right state of mind, and you just feel all these sort of, you said it perfectly. You feel empathetic, towards both of these characters, and that's, you don't see that very often in a movie. But here we are, and I think that that's something really cool. I also think that the limited role that Midge played in the movie was solid.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that they didn't try to overdo it with other characters. It was very focused on these two, and that's all you really needed. And I thought that was good. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, I would probably give it like an 87. I don't know if I'd watch it again right away, but if I wanted to, I would definitely watch it again down the road, especially with some other people. Like if I wanted to show
Yeah,
it.
no, I would. Yeah, if I wanted to show it to a friend who
Yeah.
I think would appreciate it or something like that, and what if I would want to see their reactions like throughout the movie, that'd be kind of
Yes.
fun.
Yes. No, yeah, I think that would be good. But so I would definitely rewatch it again a little bit down the line. I think the second half of the movie is well worth is worth the wait, is worth the payoff, I would say. But it's
Yeah.
just kind of it's just you have to be prepared for like the emotions that you feel in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very emotional movie.
Yeah, and I do think it's worth watching in someone's lifetime. Like if you have the chance to watch this movie, like I would watch it because I think it's very different than a lot of movies and explores a lot of important themes that aren't talked about very often.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. But Connor, I think with that, we can just about wrap up the talk of this
Yeah,
movie. Yeah,
a
I
little
think
bit of
so.
a little more somber than we're
No,
used
but
to.
that's okay. We get to change up, watch some different genres. It's good to watch movies with kind of a different angle, different perspective of sorts. So
Mm-hmm.
this is definitely
Yeah,
a solid watch, though.
yeah. Have you seen any Hitchcock movies before this?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Now
You
maybe
haven't
I
seen
have.
Psycho or
I I have not. I have heard of it, but I've not seen
okay,
it.
okay.
But I really don't think I have. Which I know he's one of the best
Yeah,
directors of the past. So maybe I really should watch some of his movies.
yeah. I
But
mean, I really
this is my
love
first one.
Rear Window. So Rear Window is one of my favorite films
Okay.
I think ever. So if
Oh,
you get a
really?
chance to watch that one, it's really good. Yeah, it also has Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, awesome. I
Mhm.
feel like I've seen him in something else, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, we're gonna wrap up this podcast. But I hope everyone enjoyed. Maybe go watch the movie Vertigo. It's a good little throwback.
Yeah.
Emotional movie. Yeah,
Back to our
perfect.
grandparents' days.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, with that, we'll wrap this up, and we will be back next week with another movie of my choice.
Yes,
So
sir.
I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see you again next week.
All right.